we'll start with Shailen, then we'll come on to you, and then we're hoping to have Stefan on as well. Okay.
All right. Okay. Fine. Thank you.
Okay. Please start the line. 3, 2, 1.
We'll start with Shailen, then we'll come on to you, and then we're hoping to have Stefan on as well. Okay.
We're live. If you're tuning in and you have any interest whatsoever in climate change, you want to watch this to the end, because this is the live update from COP26, sponsored by No CO2. We're live. If you're tuning in and you...
Hello and welcome, everybody. My name is Charles Appleby. Fantastic that you can join us on this really exciting day. So as everyone probably knows, we're within 1 or 2 days now of the world making a decision about 1.5, 1.7, 2 degrees or whatever. So it's very clear the excitement is building here. We're going to have several speakers today. We're going to start off with Shailen Mittal, and he's going to give us an intro to himself and what's going on. But to start off, really want to say a big thank you to Gary for having helped us with all of these webinars. So we've had this is the 15th of our 1.6 max webinars so far this year, and the 5th one from COP26. So Gary and Loving Social Media, this would not be possible without you. So big thank you to you, Gary. For myself, my name is Charles Appleby. I'm the founder of noco2.org. We plant trees. We make it easy for people to do something about stopping global warming. And by Christmas, we will have planted 500,000 trees. Everyone's volunteering on this. So if you would like to make a donation to help us, then for £20 we can plant 180 trees, and for £30 270 trees. So huge welcome today to Shailen and the International Association for Human Values, IAHV, who have done so much to promote the tree planting and promote stopping action on stopping global warming. So Shailen, over to yourself, please, to introduce yourself first of all.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. My name is Shailen Mittal. I'm currently here in the COP26 live from Glasgow. I'm on the board of IHV's UK chapter, the non-profit. It is a service-based organization, volunteer-based, and it's global. It works in the area of peace and conflict, in education, empowerment of women and children. And I'm representing Climate Action Now, which is one of the projects of the organization. As Charles, as you mentioned, they've planted 500,000 trees. And they also have a book for schools, which is appropriate graphic novel for year 3 to year 7. It's complete piece of education on climate change. So that is the summary. But right now, I'm happy to show you all what's happening, cover a few of the pavilions, their messages, and also share my experience of being here. This is of being in COP26.
Sure.
Yeah?
So Shailen, let's start with where you are. You've got some very strange figures in the background. So tell us about where you are, show us around and what's going on, okay?
Sure. So this is in the background you see the polar bears, and this is the booth of Tuvalu. For those of you who probably are wondering where and what Tuvalu is, it's one of the small island countries in the Pacific Islands, in the Pacific Ocean. It's between Fiji and Australia somewhere. It's one of those Pacific Island countries which are at threat, and they have some really interesting messaging. I'm going to flip the camera for you to see an artist's rendition of the messaging. So here he's showing the Statue of Liberty and talking about the 419 parts per million CO2 levels, which is the headline message, which is where we are, and we need to reduce it to 350. And again, the temperature rises as we go along, and how much of it has been since 1850, the start of the Industrial Revolution. So one of their messages is, save Tuvalu, save the world. I really like this one. So I think the message of climate change and the fight against it is not just to think about ourselves and our country. It's a global problem and it needs collective action and for people to come together. This is the exhibit. And you also see one of the penguins, which is not a very nice sight to look at. But yes, that's also the reality and we need to face it and manage it and deal with it.
Okay. So Shailen, thank you so much for that. Now let's come over to Pawan. So for everybody's information, Shailen's in the blue zone, which is the VIP important zone. And Pawan, you're in the green zone, which is the other people's zone.
Yeah.
So Pawan, you've got a whole team with you. So tell us who you are and tell us about your amazing team, okay?
Thank you, Charles and Shailen. Hi everyone, my name is Pawan. I'm one of the volunteers at IHV UK, and I've got with me Ritu and Sujata. They're also part of the Art of Living and IHV volunteering teams. We are reporting live from the Green Zone, which is the other people's part of the COP26 conference. It's a good news that the conference organizers have opened up Green Zone for anyone to walk in. So you don't need to book any tickets and just walk in and just experience the space. We have been here since last couple of days now, and yeah, it's quite insightful from what we have seen.
Wow. So Gary, if you can bring Stefan on. So Pawan, if you can tell us while you're on screen, if you can tell us a bit about your experience there from yourself and your colleagues. So what's the experience? What's the vibe of the place at the moment?
The vibe is, my experience is the vibe is extremely positive. I came into this, with a very quite a skeptical, cynical mindset based on whatever I was reading on the headlines in terms of what's been happening with the targets and 2060, 70, 50, some countries not showing up and whatnot. But what I've experienced here is that there is a lot of good things happening on the ground. I was in a session yesterday where a team from Indonesia, one of the provincial in Indonesia, they came and they talked about how they are supporting the farmers to drive regenerative farming and some real practical solutions that they shared, and I'm seeing that all around, right? So there are a lot of practical solutions that communities are already executing, and one of the key themes that is coming out is that while you're talking about these big numbers and big targets over the next few decades, what is also needed is to talk about the local adaptation aspect of climate action, because there are islands out there, particularly in the southern hemisphere, that are facing the impact of climate change right now, and they are having to adapt right now, and that's where there is a need for more focus on that aspect of the entire narrative of climate action.
Super, thank you for that. I'm going to come to Stefan in a minute to introduce himself and tell us where he is. But first of all, Pawan, would one of your two colleagues like to just tell us a little bit about their experience?
Yes, sure.
Hi.
Hi, good morning, it's afternoon. I wanted to say, I got a platform here where we were wanting to approach quite a few people regarding IAHV. So today we met people from Glasgow City Council, where the book which has been published from IAHV, and we spoke to them regarding that if they can get it to the schools. And they said we will be connecting you directly to the schools and get it available everywhere. So it's a very good platform where we are getting to see more people. And otherwise, like in the morning, we went to schools, but the schools were like very hesitant in interacting with us because of the COVID and all. One or two schools gave us the entry and we spoke about the book. But when we came here, the council was all ready for us. So that's
Wow.
a good platform given to us.
Okay, so Pawan, do you have the book there that you can show?
Yes, I'll just step out and come back. Yeah.
Show us the book. Okay, so Stefan, we're going to come to you in just a moment. And Stefan, your other colleague. Okay, so this is Italiano, yeah? Pawan, this is
Yes, this is the book. This is the the climate action book. This is for It's actually a graphic novel, so it's very entertaining, kind of storytelling, narrative style for children in the primary school education. It comes in 4 languages, Italian, German, English, and Spanish. This is the Italian version, and yeah, we are really, wanting all the schools across the UK and the world, get this book and raise awareness of climate action with the children.
Amazing. So, Pawan, your other colleague, would they like to speak?
Sujata, yes, please.
Hi.
Hi everyone, I've had a great time here. I'm with the Art of Living as a facilitator, and I'm amazed at two aspects of this conference. One is the amount of research that's going into light technology, which is so connected with what is the core of this COP26. But the other thing I was equally amazed with is the focus on well-being and how climate change is connected with well-being, and how voluntary organizations have all plugged into this. Because ultimately it is about connecting with our inner self and the universe that is going to be pivotal in making a change and driving it at the grassroots level. So we've got both ends, the fantastic sort of hydrogen, electric technology and alternative fuel resources. And then we've got everything happening with the grassroots.
So thank you so much. I mean, I know that IAHV has done wonderful work over the years with disasters in the Philippines, in Uttarakhand, with the 2005 tsunami. I know about this, but of course the fact is that if the climate throws more hurricanes and problems at us, there'll be more disasters. And the last thing we want is you guys are doing wonderful work, but we do not want you guys to be more busy. You're the A&E department. We do not want you to be more busy. We need you to be relaxed and dealing with it. So that's the importance of what the world leaders are talking about. So Stefan, let's come over to you if you would, to introduce yourself and to tell us where you are today, please.
Yes, sorry. So I'm exactly the same spot as yesterday. I haven't been able to get an interview from the Climate Fresh people. They are so busy. And yes, I'm. This is a live interview for No CO2.
Okay.
And could you explain how the Climate Fresh has been doing at the COP26?
Yeah, doing so well so far. We saw that climate education is a real subject and everybody wants to know more. So here you have the demo, Climate Fresh, but we're also doing workshop and trainings, and we're trying to have more and more people from all around the world to come and then to be trained and to facilitate the workshop in every country of the world. So we did Climate Fresh to governors, like governments, to students, to people from the how do you say, like the civil population.
Yeah.
And
the NGOs.
Yeah, from NGOs also.
Yeah.
And we understood like climate change and climate education is so important to understand what are the causes, what are the consequences to act.
So is it right to say that even though you're talking to a population of people who are already aware about climate change, the Climate Fresh is still useful for them to get the something right? What is missing in most people's knowledge?
Yeah, it's a powerful tool because we can see that there is a lack of knowledge about climate change. People they don't know how it works, what are the causes, what are the consequences, how it's systemic, how it works. Like maybe like from eating meat, it's melting glacier. What happened between those two phenomena?
Okay.
And etc. And everybody has to know more about climate change.
I have a question about this picture because it's upside down. Can you explain why?
Yeah, it's because the CO2 emission, because of the burning of fossil fuel, the CO2 is absorbed by the carbon sinks. That's why it's upside down. It's because like it's absorption.
Because it's negative emissions, right?
No, it's because the CO2 is absorbed by the carbon sink, by the photosynthesis and by the oceans. And then the rest is going to the atmosphere and it's making an additional greenhouse effect.
Yeah. And could you lead us through the following of the Fresh, please?
For example, the CO2 is going into the ocean, so it's create an ocean acidification. The problem with biodiversity, marine. There is like
Oh, we won't hear you. Okay, so what is this?
I think it's a big strike from activists
Okay.
and from indigenous population. They want like climate justice, I think.
Oh, it's indigenous population about climate justice. It's a bit noisy, so over to you. I will switch off my mic.
Okay, so Stefan, thank you for that. We're going to come back to leave the video on, Stefan, but we're going to come back over to Shaylin. So Shaylin, would you like to talk to us a little bit about what your experience is there at COP26?
Yes, sure. What I have seen is or felt a lot of hope and positivity. So my very first interaction when I landed was being part of an awards event, which was about green construction. And when we saw different categories and awards for not just positive carbon or neutral carbon construction, but also schools and care homes and renovation of existing buildings, it was very touching. The details of it and the construction industry seems to be is on top of it, and we know how much manufacturing and construction are a big contributor to the greenhouse gas emissions. So it gave me a huge uplift in my senses, in the sense it made me hopeful. So that was the first interaction. The second one, the message I'm getting or I want to share is consumerism. So we already have, so many of us have everything with us, whether it's clothes or other materials and stuff, but we keep on wanting more and going for more shopping. So this is a message not just for individuals, but also for businesses to be more responsible, not only in their sourcing, but in their marketing messaging. And I'm standing right now in front of the Denmark pavilion, which was one of the their plans and their commitment to net zero was very impressive. It really resonates with the point that countries and all the stakeholders need to make bold decisions. And Denmark is working towards, as you can see on the top, the headline of their booth is Denmark towards 2030. So Denmark plans, and I'll take a walk through their booth and what is their key messaging. There is a lot that many countries can learn from it, but also draw a contrast with the recent very disappointing announcement by India saying they will commit to 2070 and they're not in line with the rest of the world. It's quite a matter of shame that it gives a message that says we don't think it's an emergency, and we don't think or that we don't care, because considering that India has the technology, it has the skills for green energy, and they're still shying away from making a bold commitment. Nobody today who's probably in action or in jobs or in power or in decision making will be alive to see 2070 really. So like Pawan said earlier, we need smaller concrete actions and goals to say, okay, this is the milestone we will achieve by 2030, for example, or 2040 and 2050, like that. So the example here is Denmark has committed to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 70% by the year 2030, and they're aiming for up to 54% reduction by 2025. This is compared to the pre-industrial level. So the year 1990, not pre-industrial, just 30 years ago. And Denmark has had a legally binding climate act passed in their parliament, which was ratified by 167 out of the 179 members of the parliament. So this shows a strong commitment, a political will, which I think is lacking in case of India. Until very last year, the energy minister for India and the industry minister, the cabinet position was held by the same person. I think that's a bit scandalous because there is a direct conflict of interest. Coming back to Denmark, is how they are achieving or how they aim to get to that is through two aspects. One is internally, They have aligned almost all sectors of their industry, which is something they call as 14 climate partnerships. So whether it is aviation, retail, finance, food and agriculture, energy or manufacturing industry, life sciences, building and construction, you name it, every industry they've covered, they have invited them to devise concrete solutions that will reduce the country's carbon dioxide emissions. And I think it's that public and private partnership and working hand in hand towards a common goal is necessary to make it a success. And they are externally, so Denmark outside their own country, their own contribution is just 0.1% to the global the carbon dioxide emissions. So it's a drop in the ocean. But what they're doing is they have done a coalition with 19 other countries, and they are sharing the best practices, the experience, the know-how, and the solutions. So they are making a contribution globally, which I think is commendable and is a message. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi from India, when he was elected in 2014, the first time, he did launch very enthusiastically something called Solar Alliance. But I've never heard any news about it after the big PR that went after it. And now the country is shying away from its commitments and from aligning with the rest of the world.
Okay, so Shailin, that's a fantastic message that Denmark, as one of the world's smallest Western emitters of CO2 emissions, has put together this coalition where they're able to share their wonderful ideas and expertise with 19 other countries. But let me just ask you the question about India. So India is a big emitter of CO2 emissions. The data is that India creates about 7% of the world's emissions. The news that's disappointed everybody over at COP26 is that India is only willing to go net zero in 2070, whereas what's required by other countries and are committing to, like the UK and the EU, are committing to 2050. But there seems to be good news, and people have picked up on this, which is that India is committing by 2030 to get 50% of its power from renewable energy. So what's happening here, Shailin? Is India really working towards cutting CO2 emissions as fast as possible? Or in fact, is it really working to continue to support the coal industry, which it knows and loves?
Yeah, so that's a really important question because there is a huge irony there. India currently is on a major drive to discover, explore, and extract from more new coal mines in the areas of Jharkhand, near Goa. All of these, some of them will mean they will have to cut down ancient forests, which have been there for hundreds and thousands of years, and even dislocate or relocate the indigenous population from there, purely because India has this ideology or thought or limitation, if we call it like that, is they are so dependent on the cheap source of coal as a source of energy. But this is not entirely true. While India had this problem because of its scales and all of those things, the cost of solar and wind and the technology of it, all of that is a lot cheaper. It creates a lot more employment actually than even the coal. So what India is not getting as a country, as a government, as a constituent of this planet, is that this is a global problem. They need to align themselves. Sending a message of 2070 out there on a global forum is really jarring. It's laughable. It says that, it actually leads to inaction. It means that, India is not part of the common goal. So if India can actually reduce their energy sources to, come to 50% figure by 2030, why would they take another 40 years to do a net zero?
Yeah. Okay. So Shailin, great point there. You think the bottom line is that India is not part of this whole coalition, the collaboration to take action. So what we're going to do, we're going to go over next to Stefan, and then we're going to come back to Pawan.
He is really a roving reporter. Look at what.
And then after that, we're going to bring on, if you can, Gary, if you can then bring on Alice.
Yeah.
Okay. But for the moment, we need to go to Stefan.
Yeah, it's something really nice is happening. I didn't stage it, but I wanted to interview Nuclear for Climate and the Climate Fresk. And it so happens that the Nuclear for Climate people are at the Climate Fresk workshop, which started at noon. So we'll be able to interview them together. And this is very interesting. You know, it's if you look at these T-shirts, it says renewables and nuclear are better together. And this is really a strong message of hope that the many NGOs are addressing to this COP, is that we need to put, and in the words of Jim Hansen at COP21, we need to put the maximum we can and throw it at the face of climate change. And that means investing a lot in nuclear and renewables together. So I think it took 5 years to put the message together and get the message across, because there was a lot of resistance to this message initially, but now it's making its way through. And this is exactly what's happening now.
Okay.
And so this workshop is like a more elaborate version of the climate fresk. So what you've seen yesterday was the static climate fresk, which is you have a panel where the images are fixed. But this is a different version. It's a workshop where the members are progressively distributed the cards, and they have to find and they have to build their own climate fresk. So it's a more dynamic and interactive session, and there is a lot of discussion, as you can tell. And this is what they are doing. So maybe we can interview some of the climate fresk or nuclear for climate people if you want.
Yep. So let's come back to that in a minute. So let's come back at what we're going to do next. We're going to go over to Pawan to talk a little bit about the situation again with India. And then we're going to come over to Alistair and Oliver. So back over to Pawan.
Yeah.
Hi, Pawan.
Hi,
so Shailen's just given us this context of what's happening in India and this very, very frightening news about cutting down ancient forests for coal, which is at the end of the day not needed. So what's your perspective on this, Pawan?
Look, I have a slightly different perspective, if I may. Okay. Yes, India is the 7th or 4th largest emitter of CO2. But at the same time, the per person emission of CO2 in India is only 1.5 or 2 tons as compared to 15 tons in the US, right? And I think there is a point of view that the emerging economies make that they do need energy to grow, to lift millions of people out of poverty, right? And that also is a humanitarian cause, right? So I think there are always two sides of the coin. The point that I want to make is that one other aspect that is coming out, at least in my observation, is that the climate change, just like COVID, is not equally impacting all segments of society, right? It's quite unequal in terms of its fierceness. And what came up yesterday was women, particularly in the in the developing countries, are affecting more or getting impacted more as compared to men, right? So that's also an angle. So there is a linkage between the gender inequality and climate change that is also coming out, and that also needs to be taken into account as we think about solutions and progress over the next 5, 10, 15 years.
Okay, so the context that I see for, and we're going to come on to Alistair now, but just to finish off with that, the context I see is that in the UK, we have some solar panels on houses, but actually we have less than half the solar energy per square meter that there is in India. And I understand that parts of India have 300 days of sunshine. So in the UK, we have nothing like that. So the power of solar in India is just so much massively more. It's difficult to understand why India hasn't done much more with solar energy, because it's got the benefit of the wonderful strong sunshine. But anyway, so let's come over to Alistair.
Charles, really quickly, I'd like to jump in there. There is on that point, there is some dodgy business between the government and some business tycoons going on in India. Some of the biggest stakeholders who benefit from oil and coal, fossil fuel industry, are the Ambanis and the Adanis, and they are known publicly very well to be really very, very, very good friends of the Prime Minister and the ruling party. So that's another aspect which is making things very difficult for country as a whole to commit. There are some businesses who are benefiting from this, and they are lobbying hard, and they have been successful.
Okay, so we know across the world that there's been a lot of lobbying. I don't know about the situation in India, but we know there's been a huge amount of lobbying and a huge amount of delay. And there are a lot of people would be saying that the reason that COP26 so far has not been making as much progress is because of the delays and obstruction caused by fossil fuel lobbying. But anyway, that's a great introduction to Alistair. So Alistair, if you'd like to introduce yourself and tell us where you are.
Yeah, hi, this is Alistair Mullen. I'm here as part of the Papua New Guinea delegation. I'm here as the carbon advisor. It's a very proud moment for me. I'm here with my son, Oliver Mullen, who I'll let him introduce himself, but he is also today, for one day only, part of the PNG delegation.
Okay, so Alistair, just show us around with your camera. Just show us around a little bit about where you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think before I do that as well, let me explain, because we've talked about a lot of things here. And
your son was just about to say something.
I know.
It was his moment.
He never gets a word with his dad. But Ollie, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Ollie. I'm in year 13. I'm doing A-levels currently, and I study economics, maths, and RS. I'm here on work experience, and it's my first day here. And I've just been like a sponge today and just absorbing everything around me and learning a lot.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so I mean, I think what we're talking, we've got to remember that there's a lot of wishes here. Everybody's dreams of 1.5 make a lot of sense, other than they don't make any sense against vested interests. And in terms of you asked me to show you around here, Charles, I think it's very important that this is CFRN, which represents basically 50 rainforest nations, and it's sandwiched in between Saudi Arabia and UAE. And they all have their right to be here. But think of that juxtaposition. We have the old world, the oil world, and you think about the last 100 years, it's been nothing other than the petrodollar and saving these states who produce oil. That isn't going to disappear overnight. It's going to disappear through people movements as your good selves. It's going to disappear. And the one thing that is bubbling under the surface here, litigation. So, you know, what I'm speaking to a few people, and ultimately, I think that we're on a journey here from COP26 to COP28. Why do I mention that? COP27 is Egypt, but more importantly, COP28 is UAE. Obviously the heart of the Middle East. I think there will be massive developments between now and then, and my core belief is oil will be paid to be kept underground. There's a lot to transition in that period, but that's kind of where we're going. So yeah, so just to show you, we're the Rainforest Nations, the coalition here. Squeeze straightforward. There you go. And then, I mean, so the juxtaposition here, if we can see it, this is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And if you come around the back,
Wow, we've got a whole video team here today, Gary.
and then you've got, it's father and son. We've got Qatar here as well. I feel a bit like Kay Burley off Sky News here, but we've got Qatar, which is actually empty today. The delegation's gone home. I'll make no comment on that. So that's where we are. So I think massive geopolitics going on. The most important thing I've done today is I've actually been involved in some of the negotiations, and we're involved in Article 6. I saw a 24-page document for Article 6. The level of detail and whether one sentence is all included or not will make hundreds of billions, if not trillions of benefit or not. So there is an eerie silence around this place at the moment. All the key people are not around. They're all in the rooms behind me. I bumped into John Kerry. He was surrounded by people. I said, good luck today, John, bring 1.5 home. He took his mask down and said, thank you. There's a lot of pressure on these people. I don't think it will be success or failure. It's not that binary. This is a journey, not an event. And I think I'll repeat that. It's a journey, not an event. We're making lots of headway. India are on their own track. The 2070, I think it's irrelevant. They've committed to something, and there's going to be horse trading in the next 2 years. That number will come forward. I take the 2070 as a positive. They're actually committing to the journey, and they need to be paid to commit. So my conclusion here will be, this conference has been all about money, and money in a positive sense. We need money to transact everything. And the system isn't going to change. The world order can shift, it can pivot, but it's not going to fundamentally change. So this for me has been a conference about money and actually how do we activate and get the finance in place. And I've committed to get several hundred million for Papua New Guinea personally, and I will do that. Then I'll be held to that by next COP. And then by COP28, we're hoping to have hundreds of billions for the rainforest. Job starts on Monday, and lovely to be here.
Okay, so Alistair, you mentioned Article 6. Just tell us a little bit about Article 6, because the news has been pretty quiet about that. The experts are saying just how important it is, how much has been delayed. from the sense of what you've seen of what's going on, do you feel that there is going to be some positive progress on Article 6 over the next couple of days?
Article 6, in a nutshell, to explain to everybody, I'm not an expert in it. I mean, it's a brutally complex area, but it's ultimately about how nations trade carbon between each other, effectively balance of payments of carbon. And when a nation has a surplus, negative emissions, as a lot of the poorer countries do, they can actually sell and offset that with the rest of the world and the price that trades at. There's a few very, very technical points, and it's really based around the voluntary carbon markets. And there's quite a lot of CRAP in the voluntary carbon markets, and it's whether that stuff is Paris aligned. And the US are trying to have the voluntary carbon markets have everything in it, and other nations are actually trying to have only Paris compliant product in it. So that's really the fight's going around. It could be that, and bearing in mind, when you have to get signatures, you need 192 nations to sign up to the one document. That's a lot of nations. When you have Saudi versus rainforest nations, you have the multi-billion states versus the impoverished states. To get 192 nations to agree on anything is very difficult. So let's not pretend how difficult that is. If one nation rejects it, it doesn't go forward. So that's how complex this isn't going to finish by 5 o'clock tonight. I'll put my house on that. This is going to run into the weekend.
So, Alistair, another question to ask you is that there's been a lot of discussion over the last few weeks around paying the rainforest nations to keep their trees and plant more trees. Now, what you just put on the table just now, you put on the table the possibility of paying the oil states, the wealthy oil states, to keep oil in the ground. So what are we going to be doing? Are we going to be paying for the rainforest to be planted and for oil to be kept in the ground? Now, that's starting to sound quite expensive. And at the end of the day, who's going to pay for that?
I think we have to be pragmatic. You know, we need oil currently, fact, right? Oil's not going away in the next decade. We can stop, finding oil. I think the biggest movement with the EU are driving it. Let's stop subsidizing. Not even taking oil. Let's stop subsidizing oil. But remember, nation states will not be able to do that overnight. But Germany, Saudi, they will have riots if they take away subsidies. It is not. So this is why everybody gets very het up that nations won't sign up to it. I deal in the psychology. These things are inbuilt in society. Nation states will revolt over such things. Bill Gates, when I met him, said above 100, we have wars in carbon. We have wars. So this is why I sort of preach to the people who live and die climate. Yes, it's very simple to say things, but when you're in a democracy and you're trying ultimately to get re-elected, which most people do in politics, democracy doesn't work in these times because the average man on the street will not pay the price necessary to get the change we need. So that's why I'm sort of in there, and I like markets to do it. So in answer,
just clarify. Can you just clarify, Alistair? Then we'll go over to Ollie. Can you just clarify when Bill Gates says I go over 100? Are you talking about the oil price or the
so carbon above 100 per ton? Right,
carbon price. Okay.
Yeah, carbon price above 100 per ton. Yeah, he reckons that you've got $2,000 to $3,000 maximum from the Mr. Average and Mrs. Average in the States before you have a lot of, people will not support anything above that. You have to remember we're monetarily driven still, Okay.
Well, you guys switch around, change cameraman.
You walk. There we go.
Ollie.
You stand still.
Ollie. Hi, Ollie. So, you've told us who you are. So tell us a little bit about the experience at COP26.
It's been great. So it was overwhelming to start, seeing all of the nations. I spoke to the booths with smaller populations and less developed countries. I spoke to Thailand, I spoke to Bangladesh, I spoke to Indonesia. And I asked them what do they want to take home from this event. And they want those nations, less developed nations, to have a larger voice. As when I was speaking to Thailand, they get more affected by climate change than developed nations, and for them to have a bigger voice is what they want from today's. I also spoke to nations like Japan and Korea, and they are focusing in technology and increasing technology. I was speaking to someone from Mitsubishi, and they're focusing on going away from shale gas to hydrogen gas. And I learned about the process in that. I've learned a lot. I sat in a negotiating meeting just at the back. It was interesting to hear how that develops, and it's just a lot of learning.
Super. Okay, so tough question for you, Ollie. We've just heard Alistair talking about the geopolitical situation and why things maybe can't be done. So you're one of the young people, you're the youngest presenter here, and so you're going to be more affected by this than anybody. So, you know, Greta's been standing up for a point of view for you and other young people. So where are you between the Alistair saying the geopolitical things about the price and Greta demanding action now to achieve 1.5 at all costs? Where do you stand in this one?
I think if you're going to criticize world leaders, you should provide a better solution. I think Greta, she's doing a good job, but she's not providing adequate solutions. She's providing just a lot of blah, 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 as she says. And I think I stand somewhere in the middle. I believe that we need action now, but you need proper solutions. And what the governments are doing now is possibly the best that they can. I'm not too knowledgeable in this industry yet, but I stand somewhere in the middle ground between the two.
Okay, so Ollie, you say there needs to be solutions. Is there a one particular solution that you like, and then we're going to come back over to Stepan. So, you know, is there a solution that you would like world leaders to take action on?
I'm quite passionate about the ocean, and I think that what we're doing to the ocean, as in with fishing, we're overfishing, and the ocean is one of the biggest carbon absorbers in the world, and we're overfishing and we're not planting enough. So we're all talking about planting trees. There's not enough focus on planting seaweed and algae, blue carbon offsetting. So I think to see more knowledge and more presence of blue carbon is what I'd like to see from this.
Super. The fishing point was made by another young person we had on last week. But the same issue applies, though, doesn't it, Ollie? That if there's going to be if there's going to be time allowed for fish to grow and less fish taken out the sea, then people are going to have less fish to eat over the next few years. So how does that stack up? If there's less food to eat, how are people going to manage when they're used to eating fish?
Well, it's the same argument with, I just need to plug it in, with eating less meat. It's probably the best solution is going plant-based or substituting your fish out. I've tried this plant-based salmon, and it tastes quite similar to salmon, and now it's made of seaweed, and seaweed is just fast to grow and it grows in vast numbers. And just maybe reducing your consumption. So I'm not saying stop eating fish, period, just reducing your consumption of fish.
Wow. Okay. So you recommend the seaweed-based salmon then, Ollie? Yeah?
Yeah.
Ollie, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to go back.
Can I say on a human level, Alistair's one dad to another, you must be so proud. It's his world next week, and you're going to inherit this. And I just think you make me so proud. I hardly know you that you're doing such a great job.
Done a great job.
You're doing a great job, and we thank you from the heart for your efforts here.
So if you want to stay on, don't go away, Alistair. You and your video team can show us some more great background. Show us a bit of the while we're going on. Show us a bit of the Saudi stand. But we'll go back live on audio now over to Stefan, and then over to Shailen. So Stefan, do you want to tell us something about what's going on there?
Yeah, so I'm showing you the most important room in the COP, which is the main restaurant, of course. And there is a perfect echo to what Oli just said. As you see this, there is a fish bank here, and this is a very nice video made by some foundation with a very long name which I cannot pronounce. But you can find what they say about the blue economy and preserving oceans and the oceans as a carbon sink on blue-cop26.com. And I think it's a great website. It explains everything about blue carbon research and how we can turn the oceans into the largest carbon sink ever. So I'm still with the Freskers here on the Climate Fresk workshop, and maybe I can interview someone. Do you want to speak?
No, I think in view of the time.
So this is noco2.org. So it's an NGO that advocates tree planting. And so we've shown already the Climate Risk panel. And but I would like to interview Climate Risk members. Are you a spokesperson or no? Okay, so how did you get involved in the Climate Risk? You're a volunteer?
Yes, I came because a friend was knowing the game, and I was very interested to understand what EPCC report was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good way to understand in a fun manner with the game. Here in COP26, we are 160 volunteers coming from France. It's a huge success.
So 160 volunteers.
Yes.
And before, most of them never went to a single COP, right?
It's my first time, yes.
Yeah.
And so it's an enormous success. Everybody talk about climate risk.
Yeah.
In universities, in companies here, and yes, NGO also. We have partner. We want to have a new partnership, and the coverage is very global. We have contact in almost every country.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be massive implementation.
Yeah, it is like a big resonance chamber for the climate risk, right? Can I zoom on your badge here? I don't know if you can see. So that's the symbol of the climate risk. It's a hand on card, right? So it's showing. This is really like a card game, and.
Okay, so Shailen, Stefan, let's come back to ask you a question based on what Alistair was saying. Okay.
Yeah.
So Alistair's talking about discussion rolling on from this COP26, it being a journey rolling on to COP27, COP28. Stefan, you know a lot of people talking around what's happening. What do you see as where we're heading in terms of the outcome from COP26?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, Alistair was talking about this COP26 being a journey and discussions rolling on to COP27 in Egypt and COP28 in the UAE. Just you know a lot of people. What's your perspective on this journey? What are we likely to get out of COP26, and what's going to be left undone for COP27, COP28?
Well, I think like Alistair said, there are great. I'm showing you photos in the meantime. There are great takeaways from this COP, especially the commitment of China and India to commit to carbon neutrality in 2060 and 2070. It's really a half empty, half full glass issue, which is they have committed, which is the good news, and their commitment date is too late. And so the issue now is simpler to solve, because it's how do we convince them to move these deadlines to an earlier date, depending on how the conditions of the climate negotiations are going on. You know that's something special about this new agreement that was the Paris Agreement. It's not legally binding, but it is a dynamic agreement, which is it is reviewed every year at every COP. And so the way forward and the objectives are shifting with time as we get more feedback from science about the state of the climate, and as we get more feedback from industry and civil society about the speed at which climate solutions are implemented and what their exact impact is. So I think. It's a continuous process. All the stages that you've quoted, COP27, COP28, they are important stages because it shows that the Middle East is also taking action, and definitely Egypt and the UAE are important players in this game. And it's a bit like the climate risk. It's really a card game. Everybody have their own cards in their hands, and it's. Yeah, we don't know when and who is going to play which card.
Okay, Stefan, thank you so much for that. We'll just come back to everybody to have their final words, but for the moment, then let's go over to Shailen. So Shailen, you've been doing a lot there. What's going on?
Yeah, so like Stefan said, I was the roving camera. So I have with me Eduardo, who's the curator of this beautiful background, the mosaic that you see from Amazon behind us. I'm at the pavilion of Brazil Climate Action Hub. And I want to make clear, this is not of the Brazil government. That's a separate entity and a separate pavilion. This is a coalition or a melting pot of different civil society members, activists, independent of the government. Eduardo, I saw the movie playing Amazon Grooves, yeah?
Yeah.
And this beautiful collage. Can you say what this is? What is your message and why you
Sure.
did this?
Yes. This pavilion, it's the best part of Brazil, I can mention, but we choose to share with the international community, the people from the Amazon, the people from Brazil, because without people, we can't tackle against the climate change. So this exhibition, for those who are to come, we choose 13 images from 3 photographers from the Amazonian region, showing the different faces and colors from the Amazon, because of course it's a big tropical forest, but we have 25 million people living in the Brazilian side, and we should to unite our strengths and of course fight together to preserve the forest and avoid the extreme impact of climate change. So that's our message to the COP26. Without people, we can't fight against climate change effects.
Okay, thank you so much. So Shaylin, we're coming up to the final part now. So Shaylin, do you just want to give a final message from yourself?
Yeah, I think what Eduardo said is quite all-encompassing, that everybody, including people, all stakeholders need to fight this together. This is a collective fight and it is for real and we must act now. That's my message. It's no different from many others were saying, and we need to be bold about the commitments we make. That's my message.
Shaylin, thank you so much for joining us.
I also have a message for individuals and families. Please do remove your carbon by planting trees through NOCO2, through IHV Climate Action Now. It costs only £16 a month.
Fantastic. Yeah? Thank you so much, Shaylin. So Pawan, over to you and your team for final words, please, Pawan.
Sure. I think my final thought is that, it's been a hugely positive experience being here. And my biggest takeaway is that the solution lies with the local communities, not the politicians. Politicians are there to create the right environment, but it's best for the local communities to be empowered to solve this. We have got Charles, we've got a guest from Uganda. If we can take a couple of minutes.
Super, of course, please.
Jennifer, you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you.
Your life, yeah.
Yeah, sorry to come late.
It's fine.
Jennifer Sambas, a coffee farmer from Uganda. I grow Arabic coffee on the slopes of Mount Elgon, and it's fair trade organic. The farmers are certified fair trade organic. And since we are in fair trade market, we have some benefits which farmers are getting, like premiums. We also get a fair price of our coffee, and farmers are really very happy.
So Pawan, can you ask her, please, the impact of climate change with coffee in your country? Does it mean that you are able to grow more coffee or less coffee because of climate change?
Yes. We are experiencing changing in weather patterns, and this is the 30th. It's like now 30 years ago since farmers started experiencing this. Sometimes we have longer droughts, direct sunshine which hits our coffee berries. Sometimes we experience landslide which takes away people's lives and some other property of farmers. And sometimes we also experience, as there is much rainfall, it washes away our topsoil, which is
Wow. Okay. So Pawan, over to you for the final word from your team, please.
Yeah, so this is exactly what I was saying, right? The example, that it's the local farmers, local communities, they know what the problem is, they face the problem, and they also know what the solution is. We just, as a global community, global stakeholders, need to create the right environment to empower, people like Jennifer to solve this issue at the local level.
Super. Thank you so much for you and your team. You have a great time for the rest of COP26. So let's go back over to Stefan. So Stefan, looks as if you're maybe now with Alistair, are you?
Come and join the screen.
Yeah, I shut my sound.
Sorry, we're joining up here. Sorry.
Super. So Stefan, we're into final words now. So would you like to give us your final words from COP26?
Come speak on here if you want.
Yes, sure.
Just join the party.
Yeah. So the news are very good from what I hear. In fact, there might be some action later today. There is an important appointment at 2 p.m. at the UK pavilion, and then at 3 p.m. at there will be the conclusions of the German Minister of the Environment, which is a tradition at every COP. So we will see what the conclusions are then. But it will be interesting to have both the UK and Scotland opinion, and then the German opinion.
Okay, that sounds important. So Alistair, back over to you now. Final say before we close the webinar, Alistair. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think very much this is the global village that you yourself are helping create that, Charles. It's meeting friends here for the first time, and we're all putting pressure on politicians and corporates and finance. However, I would just say the one word: believe. We're 8 billion, 9 billion people. We need to believe. And we all want to criticize Shell, but how many of us stop at a Shell petrol station and fill up with petrol, right? So I've got to practice what I preach. I've got a family of a lot of people, but we've now not got a car. It's not easy, but we've decided to go carless and try it out. The ultimate solution isn't with the politicians; it's with the individuals, and it's actually with the West. We are so privileged here. I have been so humbled to work with Papua New Guinea, and the problems we have are second and third order. So I think we've got to be a lot more humble in the West. And help our partners and have a redistribution of income. And I pray that it's going to happen. And I think you and Gary are doing a great job, and I'll finish there. Well done, guys.
Okay, thank you so much. I would just make the perspective that I think that all people have a part to play in this. The importance of regulation from the government. And as Alistair has just said, if we pull up at a petrol station and we fill up a vehicle with petrol, then we're actually contributing to the problem. If we turn the central heating on, we're creating part of the problem. So we all have a role. And as I say, what I'm really hoping for is I'm hoping that the government and this level of commitment will make a bigger difference to make it easier for people to take action. And I have to say, still, I'm very critical of the level of communication we've had, certainly from the UK government, informing people about what's going on. Maybe COP26 has made a difference, but what I've seen on the BBC, we've had high-level meetings, we've had high-level presenters, we've had high-level discussions. And what we've seen today from these for 4 or 5 different camera perspectives going around the blue zone and the green zone has been absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for your camera work, your photography work. It's all going to be replay available on our Facebook page. So take a look at it later. Choose your favorite bits and share them with your friends. As I say, everyone here has volunteered. Shaylin and the IHV team have planted so many trees. At No CO2, we've planted trees. Whatever organization you're part of, please do plant some more trees and encourage your friends to plant some more trees. As we've heard, it does make a huge difference. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. We're back again tomorrow at midday, and we're going to have a summing up with a couple of really exciting speakers. We're going to have Zion Lights talking, and we're going to have Alvin Stone coming on from Australia. So thank you so much to everybody. Thank you to our presenters. Gary, final words from you.
Yeah, that we don't really have an option of keeping it less than 1.5. We have no option. So we just have to keep that alive, plant as many trees as we can. I'm absolutely inspired by Alistair, all of you, every single person that's there. Thank you for being there on behalf of humanity. I really mean that.
And thank you, everyone. And by the way, we're just not 1.5 alive. We are 1.5 max. So please support 1.5 max. It's much clearer. Thanks, everybody. Thank